Welcome. Good afternoon to you from wherever you're joining us. It's 1 p.m. West African time. It's sunny here in Lagos, Nigeria. And I'm glad to have you on today's webinar session with Secure Intelligence Lead. Today, we would be talking about AWS Serverless Architecture for startups. And if you are very conversant with the line of webinars we've had in the past couple of weeks, we've paid emphasis on startups, and we've had our engineering guys, our facilitators, come talk about how to help startups thrive in today's world of cloud engineering. And I want to welcome you once again. Today, our facilitator is not a strange face. And trust me, if you've been in one of these sessions, you would anticipate the nuggets, the valuable insights he would be sharing with us today. So let's just run through certain ground rules quickly. Can I have the next slide? It's important I mentioned that this call is being recorded and bits of it will be uploaded on our various social media channels. If you've not connected with our online community, we encourage you to please do that. To the guys at the back end, can you kindly do well to share links to our social media platform in the in-call message where our audience would get to see them and click on the follow buttons. We share very resourceful materials on our platforms, and you can connect with us and stay abreast in the trending innovations and ideas we do share. For the purpose of this webinar, we want to encourage you to ask questions. And to ask questions, please use the Q&A comment section. We would attend to them during the webinar, or we would attend to them during the Q&A the Q&A time holistically. Attendees can react or raise hands during the presentation. Other engagements required from attendees would be at the discretion of our presenters for today's webinar. Let's go to the next slide. And that would be a quick introduction about secure intelligence. SEAL teams are solution builders. We apply technology to drive effectiveness, agility, and growth for businesses. We are positioned to help enterprises scale globally. Today's world is gradually metamorphosized into a global world. And one of the tools that the world operates by today is centered around the tech space. The right interpretation of data, the saving of data, the translation of data from one form to the other. And this is what our organization do holistically, helping you to put together various architecture system to position your business for excellence across the various value chain and ecosystem that it might exist in. Through our global mindset, our multi-cloud competence, our agile spirit, we help you to grow. Can we get on the next slide? And without wasting any other time, I would want to invite our presenter for today, John Toriola. John, good afternoon. Kindly confirm you can hear me, please.
Hi, Victor. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Over to you, John. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor. Yeah, welcome, everyone. As Victor actually said, my name is John Toriola, and I'm a cloud engineer at Secure Intelligence Limited. So what we'll be discussing today, it's something something very important to a proper AWS setup. Like understanding serverless on AWS will actually help you a lot. It goes a long way in cost savings and the likes. Like most of the clients I've had the opportunity to interact with, like majorly in this part of the world, Nigeria and Africa, it's not. It's the truth is, it's actually not here alone. It's literally everywhere. People are very concerned about cost savings. Like you want to cut your cost as much, like your cost as much as possible. So how do you achieve this particular goal? You do that like majorly with serverless. You want to go serverless as much as possible whenever you want to cost. So that's what we'll be discussing today. We want to explain how to what serverless architecture is on AWS and how to go about setting it up, like in a very simple way. I'll walk you through the like a simple understanding of serverless architecture, and the next thing on our agenda will be like, okay, what are some services on AWS that you can that helps with that helps us create serverless architectures that you can use. And lastly, we'll just check out a little demo, not something huge, but something very simple, something you'll be able to understand. And I'll also try to like give you a sense of how serverless architecture actually replaces, or how you can use it in place of a regular traditional server-based approach. So that's what we'll just be looking at today. So please, if I just the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So what's serverless architecture? Now, the definition or the simple explanation here is saying is a cloud computing approach that allows you to build and run applications without the need to manage servers. Now, the word manage there is actually very, very important. We need to keep that at the back of our mind, because that's the big thing. Now, literally anything you are doing on the web or trying to provision things, trying to create resources, you actually need servers. Now, the beauty of serverless is that you don't manage the servers. Now, AWS manages the servers when it comes to serverless architecture on AWS. So that part of the job is out of your jurisdiction. You don't care what happens again. All you need to do is, okay, now this is my code, this is my data. That's what you manage yourself. But the underlying infrastructure that is used to provision most of these serverless services, it's actually not yours to handle. You have delegated that part of your job to AWS as like basically. Now, so let's proceed. In a serverless model, the cloud provider, in this case AWS, automatically handles the infrastructure, scaling and maintenance, allowing developers to focus solely on writing code and building functional. Basically, what I explained just now. Everything that has to do with code writing, everything that has to do with provisioning of servers actually left you don't think about it any longer. It's now being handled by AWS. So that's basically what serverless is. Now, in a situation, let's assume you are trying to provision things on-prem. You start thinking about different servers for the resource or for the workload you are trying to create on-prem. Now, if it's a simple web application, you need to get servers that will run the front end of the application, servers that will, and that's the web server. You have to provision get servers. Now I'm discussing on-prem now. You have to get servers that will handle the back end part of the application. That's the application server. Then you have to set things like networking up. Now, even networking to some extent also needs some servers. You need to do some provisioning of DHCP servers and the likes. So most of these things are actually, when you go serverless, most of this responsibility actually leaves your care. All you need to get going is your code. Now you've written your code. You've tried to catch the errors in the code. Your code is good. Your code is perfect. What you need now is go serverless. Like you don't want to have anything to do with managing servers at all. So that's what serverless is basically. So can we just go to the next slide, please? Okay, so the next thing we'll be discussing will be some like serverless services on AWS. Now, okay, so when you are trying to do things without thinking about the server, so the question that should be on your mind is like, can you still get the basic things you are able to do when you are using your servers or managing your servers yourself? Can you still get those things done with serverless? Yeah, that's the truth. Is you can actually do everything you are used to with servers. Now, so let me just talk about some of the services. We'll actually discuss more, but this will be the first phase of like these are like some of the services we'll be using in today's demo. That's why I actually separated them out. Now, what's AWS Lambda? Now, AWS Lambda is basically a function. That's what it is. You have your code. You've written your code and you just want to run it. Now, if you are going to go the server route, you basically need to get a server setup before you can write codes and do deployment. But with Lambda, you are not concerned about what, like, in which particular server is the code running. All you need to do is to just put your code in a Lambda function and get it running. It's that simple. Now, one of the beauty of Lambda function in AWS is you can actually use the Lambda function to do a lot of integrations of AWS services. Like you have a DynamoDB that you want to you have a bucket that you want to drop things from the bucket into a DynamoDB database. You can do that with a Lambda function. Yeah, you can use streams also, event notification, but you have to go through the Lambda function to get that functionality done. So that's basically what the Lambda function is. It's just a function. Now, you don't need a server to get your function running. You just put your code in the Lambda function and you run your Lambda function and your code is working fine. That's what Lambda function is. Now, let's go to the next service, AWS S3, which is simple storage service. Now, this is actually a storage service, as the name implies. What can you do with S3? It's an object storage. Basically, you can save your pictures, your videos. Like, you can just put everything in an S3 bucket. It's that simple. Now, I don't know if you've heard at all, but like everything Netflix, like you must, everybody definitely knows. Like I'm sure everybody on the call knows what Netflix is. Like everything Netflix is actually running in AWS, and most of the videos you are watching, they are being served from an S3 bucket. Now imagine the scale of Netflix, the global reach of Netflix, and everything is being handled with S3 with simple storage service. That should show you how reliable and how huge the number of things you can put in an S3 bucket is. It's actually very, very reliable, and it's very, very durable. So that's, and as we've been explaining, as I've been explaining, sorry, you really don't need a server to get the S3 bucket up, like to get the storage service. It's serverless. You just go into AWS, you go into the console, and you start setting things up. You just create a bucket and you start putting your objects in the bucket. It's that simple. You don't have to first create a server to do anything with S3 because it is serverless. Now, during the demo, I will try to show you how most of these services actually intermingle, like how you can get them working with each other. The other service I would like us to quickly talk about is Amazon API Gateway. Now, what's an API Gateway? Now, basically, if you've been programming for a while, probably you've been in the tech space for some time, you must have heard about APIs. Now, generally, the way you set up APIs is you definitely need a server to actually serve your APIs, because your APIs has to be like, if you want your APIs to be reached over the internet, if you are not running your APIs locally, probably you are just testing things. But once you get into production and you want your customers and your users to be able to reach your APIs, you need to serve the API from a server. But when you go the API gateway route on AWS, you really don't need to set up a server. Now you just create an API gateway. You create resources. You create methods, and you can start reaching your API. You create your post method, your get method, and the likes, and your API is already online. You don't need, like, the fact that we are taking out the place of creating servers to get all these things, because all these services are mentioning, like the traditional way of getting these things done is for you to first of all create servers. But like I've been explaining, you really don't need to create servers to get any of these things done. You just spin them up and you start deploying. It's that simple. Now, the next service is the DynamoDB, Amazon DynamoDB. This is actually a storage service, is a NoSQL service, NoSQL storage service, and DynamoDB can scale to unprecedented levels. Like you can add so many items, so many objects into items into your table, and it will just keep scaling. The number of columns you can have in a DynamoDB table is literally unlimited. So just imagine the scale. Like if you are to set up something that can work as like DynamoDB with servers, like I can't begin to imagine the number of servers you will need to get that functionality, or that DynamoDB will offer you. But you really don't need to do that with servers any longer. You can just go ahead, create your table, and you start adding items into your table. It's that simple. You just keep adding and adding and adding. Like there is no limit to this thing. Yeah, like that's actually the beauty of most of these serverless services. You can just keep adding things. You can just keep adding lines and rows. In DynamoDB, you actually don't call them rows. You just call them items. Like you just keep adding items to your table, and it keeps increasing and increasing. Like, because you don't need servers. Everything is being handled by AWS, basically. Now, the next service will be Amazon Event Bridge. What's an event bridge? An event bridge is basically a way for you to connect like different services also. Like you can use it to, let's say you want to trigger a Lambda function anytime an object gets dropped into an S3 bucket. Now, I explained S3 bucket the other time. Like it's a storage service where you can add anything, any object, like can add text files, videos, and the likes. Now, you might want to have a functionality whereby whenever an object is dropped into the S3 bucket, you want to probably trigger a Lambda function. That's where you need an event bridge. Like it's used to bridge events, as the name like it implies. Literally, you want to bridge events from different services. Okay, you have something going on in Lambda function, or you have something going on even in a server. Yeah, and once the server gets to let's say there is an alarm or something on your server, on your EC2 instance, you can trigger an event bridge to actually do something with a Lambda function, maybe to shut down the EC2 instance and things like that. Event bridge actually cuts across a lot of the services. Like you can trigger an S3 bucket from name the service, like from SNS, from SES. You can literally do anything that has to do with connecting services on AWS with event bridge. That's what an event bridge is basically. And like lastly, but because we still have more services that I'll just touch them briefly. Let me just quickly talk about Amazon Aurora Serverless. Now, Aurora is a database, is a relational database. Like Aurora itself, it's a relational database that you can use to either provision a MySQL or a PostgreSQL kind of database, basically an RDS. Like you can use it to provision a SQL database. Like that's what Aurora is. Basically, two types of databases: MySQL and Postgres. Now, when you go Aurora Serverless, because Aurora itself actually it uses servers. You need to get servers up, like EC2 instances and the likes. You are not doing the setup basically. AWS handles it because Aurora is a managed service. But when you now go serverless, you can scale to unlimited scale. Like you can just keep scaling when you bring in Aurora Serverless. That's the beauty of like the serverless that you're attaching to Aurora. because Aurora itself will scale to the levels you have actually depicted, like you have set on the service. Okay, I want the service to scale to this level when this happen, when the database gets to probably, okay, maybe you are using auto scaling. Okay, if the database gets to this particular level, I want the server to scale to this much. But when you are using Aurora serverless, you really don't need to specify. You just need to keep adding rows and columns, and the database will just keep auto scaling on its own. So, like, the fact that we are taking everything that has to do with the management of the server, how things are being managed and patched, you are taking that burden away from yourself. It's enough reason why you need to think serverless, because if you are to be handling most of this basic setup, like setting up the server, setting up the networking and all those.
Okay, can Emeka please confirm if you can still hear John?
No, I'm not sure I can hear John again.
So I think John is having a little of network glitch, and we'll do well to, let's just give him a moment to rectify that. Just to fill in why John is away, Adebayo Ojo, I see your question. We'll take it shortly. Franklin, can you confirm if you can see the slides now? I was chatting with you, so you could just drop a message for me to confirm that. Fred, I can see your message now. Can you please can you ensure you have a strong bandwidth? Can you please confirm you have a strong bandwidth? Adebayo, someone is validating that he can see the slide. So let's do that quick
So guys, can everyone hear me?
working. Yes, John, we can hear you. Welcome back. So just a moment before you take it over. We're taking note of your question, Edwin. I can just drop the question. Thank you very much. We'll do well to answer that just shortly. All right, John, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I actually don't know where you guys stopped hearing me. So can anybody help me in the in-call message? Just specify where you guys stop hearing me, because I can't figure that out. Like, I've been talking since I didn't even know. It's funny. Wow.
Can you hear me, John?
I can hardly hear you.
Okay, so let's pick it up from the S3 bucket where you were talking about Netflix having their storage on S3.
Wow. That's like I've been talking since. Okay, thanks, Victor. Thank you so much. So okay. I think someone just said no Amazon Aurora. Yeah. Okay. You guys had the explanation for Amazon Event Bridge, right? Oh, okay, that's good. Like, I'm not too far off. So I was explaining Amazon Aurora. Like, basically, Aurora itself is a SQL database like you use it to I think it has a support for MySQL and PostgreSQL basically. So it's actually a managed service on AWS. Like I'm talking about Aurora itself, like apart from the serverless. Okay. Oh, okay. I apologize. Like I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Like my network has been acting very weird all day. Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. I think we're on the same page now. Oh, yeah, we're on the same page. So I was explaining Aurora. Like Aurora itself, it's a SQL service. It's a managed service on AWS, and you can actually use it to run PostgreSQL and MySQL basically. And Aurora, you can actually have something like auto scaling. Aurora by itself is scale. Now, when you bring in serverless, you are getting another level of functionality from Aurora. Like on the norms, you have to specify the number of like how you want your Aurora database to be configured. You have to set all those things. But when you go Aurora serverless, you don't need all those setup. You just create your database and you start adding things, rows and uh, data to your database. That's what serverless gives you. Like you just start working. You don't need to think about the setup. Like that part, the thought of setting things up is gone. You just need to create and start working. That's what serverless gives you. And apart from that, it also gives you a lot of cost savings. Now, to just point some things out. Now, I think the last class I took, like the last webinar I took, I was actually discussing things about CI/CD, continuous integration, and continuous deployment on AWS and the likes. We also looked at some demo. I think we have the video on YouTube. You can also check those things out. Now, apart from helping you, like if probably you're an enterprise organization and you're on the call, like, or you handle a managerial position in an organization, and you need you need to set these things up. We actually do that at CIL Secure Intelligence. This our proficiency. This is what we know how to do. We help you do the setup. We get the security part. We make sure everything is done properly. We help you do, like, we give you AWS best practices. That's what we do. Now, like, so just to be clear, that this is not just what we do. We anything AWS related, anything cloud related, anything Azure, anything GCP, we can help you set anything up. Like that. These are the type of things we do. So this webinars, when you are listening to this webinar for the first time, don't assume like this. Okay, maybe this is what this organization does. Like, we do more than this. Basically, we do a lot of things with Azure, AWS, and the likes. So, sorry, if I can get to the next slide now. Okay, thank you. Okay, still on serverless, like these are some other serverless services that are on AWS. You have Amazon SNS, a simple notification service. You want to maybe your Lambda function is done running. You want to send a mail or a notification to, basically a mail to the developer in charge. Like, okay, your server is done. Like, this workload they are trying to run, it's done. You can just set up AWS SNS to get that running. You get you don't need, like, the beauty is you don't set up servers, and these things are cheap. They're very cheap to run them, because obviously you're not using servers. Amazon Kinesis firehose, like this, if you are trying to run a workload that requires real-time information, probably things that tell you about earthquake. Like, okay, let's say you are trying to get earthquake data in a location. You don't want to get the data and after 5 minutes process the data. You want it to be done real time, because if it's after 5 minutes, like in the space of a minute, something terrible can happen. So that's why you use Kinesis firehose for, like, and Kinesis data stream. There are but the underlying thing is you are not setting up servers for all these things. But if you want to do it like the traditional way of doing most of these things I've been explaining, is to first set up servers. But now that you're not setting up server, you're just working like directly, and you'll be getting a lot of cost savings from these things. Another thing, one other service is AWS SQS, like this simple queue service. Like you want to set up your let's assume I think I gave a scenario the other time. Okay, if you have if whenever an object drops into an S3 bucket, you want to trigger a Lambda function. Now, there's all possibility that the object drops into the Lambda function and the Lambda function fails. So how do you handle those type of failures? Let's say, imagine if it's something, okay, let's say from the Lambda function, you are trying to put some information into a DynamoDB, or sorry, basically into a database, basically. And in that type of instance, you don't want any failure on your Lambda function. Failures can actually happen. So how do you remediate things like that? You set up a queue. Okay, everything that gets into the S3 bucket, let it go into the queue first. Now from the queue, the Lambda function picks it up from there. Now there's a setup that it's only when the Lambda function has processed the information in the queue or the data in the queue, that's when the information gets deleted. So if you have things like that, you can be rest assured that all your data, everything that is entering the bucket will be processed. You get, and you are not doing anything with servers here. You are just provisioning, and you start working from basically from scratch. Another service that's also serverless is AWS AppSync. Now, if you've been programming for a while, you should have heard about GraphQL. Now, AppSync is actually AWS proprietary service that actually gives you the functionality of GraphQL. Basically, and you I'm sorry I'm repeating this, but if you've actually done some of these things like on your own, you realize that you need servers to do all these things. You want to set up a GraphQL API, you have to get a server to do the provisioning. But with AppSync, you don't do that. You don't need that. Just get into your AWS and you start provisioning things. You start setting up your GraphQL API, and when you're done, you can test it out on Postman or probably on your site directly. You have AWS Amazon Cognito. Okay, I think you have Secret Manager. Yeah, you have AWS Secret Manager. Like this, where you save your secrets. Now you are not using a server. You just save probably your database credentials, the database username and the password. You can use AWS Secret Manager to do those setup. And you can when you add the values to your Secret Manager, you can get it from any other service. You can get the value from a Lambda function. You really don't need to have the value written down anyway. Just use Secret Manager. You have AWS Cognito. Cognito is basically used for user management. Maybe you have a web application and you want the users on your web application not to be okay. Can everyone still hear me? Let me be sure I'm still on the call. Hello.
Yes, John, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you, Victor. So AWS Cognito is a way you use Cognito to set up user management. You know, if you are working with your regular full stack application, you've written your web application, your backend server. You set up a database. Let's assume you are trying to work with a main stack, Mongo, Express, React, and Node.js. You are working with a main stack. If you are doing something like that, that means your database will be MongoDB. Then all your users will be saved into the MongoDB. Then you pick them up from there from your backend. Now, when you set up Cognito, you don't need all those. You don't need to go through those routes. Cognito saves all the users. As like there's an integration between Cognito and something like AppSync. There's an integration between Cognito and API Gateway that I mentioned in the previous slide. You get those integration actually helps you streamline user management. You really don't need to set up a different database to get those things done. Cognito handles it for you. And it's all these things are without, you're not setting up any servers again. You don't need all those things. You have AWS Glue. AWS Glue is basically used for data analysis. You have big data and you want to analyze. You want to run some. You want to transform the data and then run analysis on the data. You use AWS Glue. AWS Glue also is serverless. Because these things in most cases, if you are doing it on your own, or probably you are doing it on-prem, you will set up something like an Hadoop cluster to run your data analysis. But with AWS Glue, you just put your data into the service, and you specify the statement, the SQL commands you want to run on the data, how you want the data to be transformed, and AWS Glue picks it up from there and runs all the analysis, runs all the transformation. That's the beauty of data serverless. You have step functions. Step functions is a way for you to integrate like several Lambda function or several services in steps, basically. Okay, when you are done with this, do this. When the object drops into an S3 bucket, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to trigger a Lambda function. Now, when the Lambda function is triggered, I want the Lambda function to take the information of the object in the bucket, add them into a DynamoDB. That's a flow. That's an architecture right there. And this architecture I explained simply with serverless services. All those things that you are doing in each step of the simple application, you will be using servers if you are not going serverless. And that's more costly. So these are just some of the few services on AWS. You have AWS Fargate. Use Fargate for something that for ECS, Elastic Container Service. If you've worked on AWS a little bit, you should have heard about ECS. Like this, ECS and EKS basically, both of them uses Fargate. Now, if you are running ECS or EKS without Fargate, it means your cluster is being handled by EC2 instances, by servers. But if you don't want to manage the servers, you want to leave that to AWS, you just run your workload with Fargate. And Fargate manages everything. All you need to do is to specify the tasks you want to run. You specify how you want the pod to be arranged, and like that for EKS now. And Fargate handles everything from there. You specify the image you want to run, basically, and Fargate will do the magic for you without you getting into details of how things are being done. And you have App Runner, Amazon App Runner. What's App Runner? App Runner is a way for you to bring most of these services together, and you just specify what your application is. Okay, this is let's say it's a Node.js application. You just put it on App Runner. App Runner will spin up all the serverless services that needs to get the app up. That's basically what App Runner is. And this whole thing, almost all these services, there are several other services also on AWS that are also serverless, but this to mention a few. And as I explained earlier, the fact that you are taking away the burden of, okay, sorry, I'm trying to check the QA. Like the fact that you are taking away the burden of managing servers alone and having to get probably system administrators or system operations guys to set these things up using Chef and Puppet and all those stuff. The fact that you are taking those headaches away from yourself, it's enough for you to cost a lot of cost on your workload, and you actually have a lot more time to get all that workloads or other application up and running, because you are not spending time doing things that can be done if you are gone serverless. So this is the beauty of working with a serverless architecture. Basically, that's the beauty. Can we see the next slide? I think I'm behind schedule now. We just run through the demo. We're almost done. So please, I can't see the next slide. guess we're having difficulty. Like we're very sorry. The network has been very, very bad. Like
Okay, John. Yeah, why the slides are coming up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Victor.
Why the slides are coming on? Let's take a few questions before we go into demo. So we have Adebayo is asking, if I have a Windows server on AWS, do I still need S3 bucket to store images from my application?
Yes, you can. You should. Like I would advise you should. Reason is because your server can actually connect to S3. You can do that over the internet, or you can also do that. You can leverage the AWS network for faster connection. You can do that. The reason why you would even want to do that is if the object you are planning to store in the S3 are actually things that might eat up the storage of your server. So it's better to have those things on S3, because one, you don't want to spin up a heavy server like to handle the storage, because S3 is actually very cheap, and that's what S3 is actually good at. Like, okay, saving objects. Basically, that's what S3 is good for. So it's better you go down.
Let me take one more question. With the serverless architecture, do you have control over your data? Very, very good question from Edwin.
Yeah, definitely. Your data is your data. It's just that AWS just gives you locations to store them cheaply. That's all. You are the one. There's something on AWS that is called shared responsibility model. Like things that have to do with data, like your code, the security of your code. You are the one that handles those things. You handle those things. What AWS with serverless, what AWS is taking away from me is the ethic of setting up servers to get these things up. You get, that's what AWS is taking away from you. Nothing, they are not, your data is still your data. What happens to your data, how to secure your data is still your responsibility. But the fact that previously, like in the traditional way of setting most of these things up, you have to first buy, like if you are doing it on premise, that's even much more burdensome. Like you have to first buy the server, then run, like get a building, of course, then run network, like set up networking, then bring in the servers and start doing these connections. Like imagine going that route when I can just go on S3 and just take my object and put it in an S3 bucket and I'm good. Yeah, that's just what AWS brings to the table.
All right, thank you very much, John. You can go back to your slide now.
Okay, thank you. So what we are actually trying to, the demo we are trying to run today is to have like, okay, I think I've answered this question already. So the demo we are trying to run is a simple one. We are just trying to set up APIs. Yeah, so how do you, like, what you know, if you are setting up API, if anybody on the call, if you've worked with, I think I referenced the main stack the other time, and if you're a Python person, if you've worked with Flask, like to set up APIs with Python, it's the same pattern. You need a database and you need your Python library to the Flask library in for Python to do the integration with your database. Now, that's how you set up APIs basically. If you are using Node, you want to use Express to do the API setup. Now, just imagine the work of doing. You will see the comparison now when I do the setup with AWS. We have a few minutes to go, and we will quickly run through the setup. Actually, I've written out the stack, the CloudFormation resources we'll be using. So those things I will show them to you now. You will now see how easy it is for you to quickly set up an API compared to spinning up a server, even if you are not doing it on-prem. Now, let's assume you are doing it on AWS with an EC2 instance. You will see how easy it is for you to go the Lambda route and going the server route, like doing it with server. that's one of the major things I want us to actually take away from this call, from this webinar today, like the simplicity. And when you factor in the cost savings, that's when you get wowed, because the Lambda function doesn't get triggered. Like, if you are running the API with a server, let's say you are running the API with a server, the server has to keep running. You can't shut down the server at any time. And that's the fact that it has to keep running is a lot of money. Now, API Lambda functions, the only time the Lambda function gets triggered is when somebody is trying to reach your API. And I think your first 1 million calls to Lambda function is actually free. So imagine doing it with server and comparing the same simple this thing with doing it with a Lambda function. The cost savings is enormous. So you want to think about, like, whenever you are trying to, I was discussing this with some enterprise organization, I think about a month ago, that whenever you are thinking cost savings on AWS, or basically on AWS or on the cloud majorly, you want to think serverless. That's the route you want to go. Yeah, so let's just walk through the demo very quickly. If you can get the next slide up. We'll test the demo on, so it's something this simple that we're trying to run, just that we'll be taking out the bucket part of it for now. Maybe in subsequent webinar we'll see the full integration. So we just want to run from the client to API gateway. Now the service in red sort of is its API gateway to the Lambda function and DynamoDB. That's what we want to see, like that simple integration, how to do this simple setup. And DynamoDB, as I said earlier, very, very cheap. Lambda function doesn't get triggered until somebody's trying to hit your endpoint. Very, very cheap. API gateway also is very, very cheap, because these services are actually not using servers. So you don't manage the servers. That's where the cost savings is coming from. So let me share my screen now and show you what I have up. So we're going to the demo now. We have a few more minutes to run through the demo. I've done the setup already, but I will show you the template I'm using. So let me quickly share my screen. So as I said earlier during my speech, that now this is a part of what we do. In case you are planning to reach out to secure intelligence to help you set up things on AWS or on other cloud services, Azure or GCP, this is just one of the things we do. We can actually, even if you want to go the server, like if your setup cannot be, one of the things we do is we want to understand your workload. What are you trying to do? If the best route to solve the use case is using servers, we go that route. We're actually proficient with that, and we do all these things in pipelines. We don't want to just create services here and there. We follow the best practice. So you can reach out to our SDRs in the group in call message, and you can actually set up a meeting with them. Let them, like, okay, what do you want to do? You can talk to anyone in the organization. You can just reach out. Some of my colleagues are actually in the you can reach them in the group message, and they will get back to you on, okay, what's the best route to. We'll actually bring in engineers into the call, and we'll help you. We'll check your workload and provide the best solutions to your use case. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I think someone's hand is up. Oh, okay, this is a long time ago. Okay. So can everyone see my screen now? Wow.
Not yet, John. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. No, I'm not interested. Picture. Okay. Sorry, network share screen. Good. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Can everyone see my screen now? Okay. Thanks for the thumbs up. So let's just quickly look at the templates we are working with. So these are templates. Hopefully you can see this. Let me expand this. So these are the resources we will be provisioning. We have a parameter, the project name. I will show you the setup. And like we have a table, a DynamoDB table. We are trying to run through, okay, like it's just a simple to do, a to-do backend. You want to add a to-do and you want to get your to-dos. That's basically what we are trying to do. Am I getting messages? Clear. Okay, I think. Okay. So we are trying to, the API is an API to fetch to-dos. You want to add a new to-do and you want to get your to-dos. That's what we are trying to achieve. So we have a DynamoDB table that will, like it's a no, and from what I explained earlier, it's a it's a database for storing non-SQL data. So that's what the to-do table is for. And we have the Lambda function that we are using to get the to-dos. Like, okay, all the things we have in the database. This is the Lambda function we are using to get all our to-dos, basically from the table or from the database. And this is the Lambda function we are using to add new to-dos. Okay, if you have, okay, what I'm trying to do is I want to visit a friend. That's how you add to-dos. And you have the Lambda row. This is the row that gives the Lambda access to to the DynamoDB table, because you want the Lambda. Now on AWS, in case you are not aware, on AWS all the resources are actually they are mutually exclusive, even though they are in the same account. They are owned by the same person. All the services, they actually don't talk to each other except you tell them to. So the way you inform services, the way you tell services to communicate with other services is by setting up a Lambda row. Sorry, by setting up rows. So this is a row here, and this row is allowing, if you check line 98, the row is allowing the action Dynamo, like it's allowing. Okay, let me show you who is assuming the role. Now somebody has to assume the role, and the person that can assume this role is a Lambda, or a Lambda resource, or a Lambda function. Like that's from line 89. So what can the role do? Anybody that assumes the role will be able to do anything with DynamoDB. That's what this line 100 is specifying. That this DynamoDB star, it's saying anybody that has access that assumes this role should be able to do anything with DynamoDB. And the reason we are doing that is we want our Lambda functions. I pointed out two Lambda functions, the get to do's and the add to do's. Both of them are using this role to interact with the table. And you want another thing we want to set up is our API gateway. Now the API gateway, we need to invoke the Lambda function such that if anybody tries to call the add to do API, the API needs to be able to get to the Lambda function. So the way we inform the Lambda function that somebody can trigger you, or somebody can invoke you, or another service can invoke you, is by setting up this Lambda permission. So what's the Lambda permission saying? It's saying this action, Lambda invoke function, and the function name, which is the get to do Lambda, can be invoked by this principal, which is API gateway. Simple. So we have one for the get to do Lambda. Can everyone see me? Can everyone see me? Okay, good. Thank you. So the add to do lambda also can also be invoked by the API gateway. And now this is the API gateway, the REST API, because with API gateway, you can actually create several types of API. You can create WebSockets for probably multiplayer games. You can do that with REST with API gateway also. But we are actually provisioning a REST API. Now, as I said earlier, for GraphQL APIs, you use AppSync. Now, in your REST API, you have to create what is called a resource, like your /to-do. Like if you've worked with, if you're a full stack developer, you should know how to create these things with Express and Node.js, or Flask. These are just your route. Like this route is to-dos. So that's what we are trying to create here. We are creating a route. And on this, we have the method. Okay, this is a get method, and we have another one which is a post method. Now the get method is for getting the to-dos, while the post method is for adding the to-dos. So that's everything in the CloudFormation template, and this is what I deployed. Let me just show you my stack. Okay. Sorry, I'll be taking about probably 5 or 10 minutes of your time just to run down the full, to complete the demo. So I've deployed the template already. So I'll just show it to you in our sandbox account. It's coming up. Just formation. Okay. Okay, this is the CloudFormation template. Hopefully everyone can still hear me and can still see my screen. So this is my stack. This is the stack I deployed. We can check all the resources that are provisioned with the stack. Now, these are the resources. I already pointed them out in the template already. Just want to show you everything again. So these are my Lambda functions: add to do Lambda and the get to do Lambda. This is the REST API. This is the REST API. So all our resources are properly deployed at the moment. So let me just run through the whole setup. So the API I created is, I think, John Demo something. Yeah, this is John Demo REST API. So the API has two endpoints in the to-dos part. Can you see the part we added, like the route we added in the template? That's the route /to-do, and we have two different methods here, two different endpoints. You have the get endpoint to get your to-dos, and you have the post endpoint. Now, if you check the get endpoint, you will see that it has integration with the Lambda function, the get Lambda function, integration request. Okay. Can you see that this is the get to-dos? And if you check the post also, you will see that this also has integration with the, this is the add to do, basically. So if you go into the Lambda function also, we see the Lambda functions also, they are there also. But we will be getting this on our YouTube channel, so you will see the code and everything. Just don't want to bug you with most of these things. So let me just quickly complete this whole setup here before I go to. Now, I can do everything like what I'm about to do now. I just plan to do this on the console. So you know that apart from deploying from template, I can actually do most of these things on the console. It's just that doing it on the console is not advisable because it's not scalable. So that's why I did the bulk of the whole thing with the templates, then show you that, okay, I can actually do some interaction also from the console too. So let me just go to my resources, and I'll go to this get and set up. I'll deploy the API. Let me create a stage a new stage name. Let me name the stage sandbox and deploy. Okay, good. So we have our stage. So that's the sandbox. Okay, to do's. Yeah, so everything is in our stage now. So we can test things out from here. Let me do the test from resources first. Should we? Okay, let's just go from stages and go to Postman directly, so we don't have to waste. I don't have to waste any more of your time. Okay, I think I have this already on Postman. I think I have this already on Postman. So let's see our get to do's. This should be returning nothing at the moment because we don't have any to do. Maybe we should just quickly check our not send request. What's happening there? Stages, good. Okay. Let me do this also. Coming from resources. Let me test it from here. Okay, let's test. Okay, we are getting a good start. So our to-dos is actually empty. At the moment, if we check my response, it's empty. So let me go to the DynamoDB table. These are the tables. So we'll just see that the table is the database is empty at the moment. And John. Okay. Good. Our table, let's explore the table items and see that the table is actually empty because we've not added any to do at the moment. So our table is empty. So let's try to add, let's try to post a to do from here. So to do ID, because this is how I actually set up the partition key of the table is to do ID. So let me just say this is 001. And I think I have one other thing on my table. I have completed. This can be true or false. Should be small. And lastly, apart from the name of the to do, like what are you trying to do? Visit a friend. Now you can see I'm on the post now because I'm trying to add a new to do. That's why I'm entering a body of my to do. So let me just test this. Okay, I'm having internal server error. Let me check this out. Now you will see the integration like this like I'm happy we're actually getting this error. So I'll just show you the integration from here to CloudFormation to how can you see, okay, what's causing the error? Okay, let me just see what's the issue here. Syntax error in module index, return outside function index dollar. Okay, so let me go into the Lambda function. Okay, just in 6 more minutes we should be done with this call. Sorry for taking your time. So let me just quickly get into Lambda function and pick out what the issue is there. Now you see that from Lambda function, you get to something called CloudWatch. Like we want to see, okay, my function is failing. How can I figure out what's wrong with the function? Then because I've integrated the function also to CloudWatch. Like that's why I can get the details of the failure. So let me see what's causing the failure. John, I'm trying to do get. Okay, get to do's. Let's see. Okay. Let me just check my code first and see if I can figure it out from the code directly, or if I have to go and check. Let me see. I think let me just check if there's a message for me. Is that for me? Okay, coming. Do you think Lambda can handle a multi-tenant database architecture? Sure. What Lambda is just it just helps you like do integrations basically. So where you are getting your data from, where you are taking to, that's not Lambda doesn't care. Just okay, specify from what service to what service. Lambda will send the data. Like you just set it up basically with the Lambda function. It will do the integration directly. Okay. This forget. I'm trying to see what's happening with my adding, like to add the function. Okay, is my add. Sorry, my network is actually very slow. That's why I'm having these lags. And I'm happy. Oh, okay. I think, okay. I have an idea. The function is not properly formatted. I think that's where the error is coming from. Wow. This might fix the issue, but I can check from CloudWatch to confirm if that's what. But that's a major that would be a big issue, because that can actually cause a lot of issue with Python code if the alignment of your code is not right. So I think that's where the error is coming from. But just to confirm from CloudWatch, let me see what is causing it. But while CloudWatch is opening up, let me just try the function again from here. Let me try to run it again since I've deployed it again. So let me test again here. We have status 200. So our to-do item has been added. It's good. Let's check our database to confirm. Yeah, I think that's the error. Okay. Yeah, we have something in our table. Now let me try to run this again from. Let me run the get to do again. I'm trying to like, if it doesn't work again, okay. I think probably there's also issue with the get to do also. Let me see if the code also has been. Now the code here is actually okay, but let me test from API gateway first. Now you can't imagine because I've done these things with servers, with instances also, so you can't imagine the type of headache you will go through if you are trying to. It's working from here. What's happening? I guess it's my network from Postman, because the get API actually worked from here. You see, this get, and I'm wondering. I think my network is actually what's causing the issue here. But let me see, just to confirm. Let me get the stage again. I think I deployed the both of them into the stage. I did that. I'm actually wondering why the sorry. Let me test it again from Postman. Get to those. Let's see. Missing authentication token. Now this is an issue from Postman that I will need to spend some time to fix. But you can see that the API is already working and our database is already being populated. So you can just easily integrate this to probably a function to a web app. Basically, let's add one more to do. before we round off for today. Let's just add one more. Okay, I want to post a new to do. What am I trying to do? I want to join, like, let me add the body. So back to tests. So a new body, let's see. Let's say the to-do ID. Okay, sorry. To-do ID. Let's give it 002. The first partition, the first to-do was 001. So completed. Let's say true also. So what am I trying to do? The name. So let's say okay, join the next secure intelligence CIL webinar. Now this is not completed because it's the next one. So let's make this for, so it's something we want to do also. So let's just add it and check our database. It's been added. Good. Let's check our database again and confirm it's there. So we have 2 objects. You see, it's there. We are good. Join the next CIL webinar. It's false. It's not completed. And let's try to get our to-dos again. Now the issue from Postman is, I think it's either it's my network or just something I need to troubleshoot for a while to fix. But I'm sure it's not something huge. So our to-dos, you see, we have two different things we want to do. The first one is visit a friend, and my spelling of friend is actually terrible. Sorry. And the next is, the second to do is join the next CIL webinar. Now, just imagine trying to do like this. I completed this in less than probably 15 minutes, or let's say at most 20 minutes. Though I have some templates written already, but those templates are things I did in few, like probably an hour or an hour, 30 minutes. Like, let to be sincere, I think I used like an hour to write up the templates. So imagine trying to do all these things by first setting up servers and trying to configure your web server, your app server, and all those things. Like you didn't like, the number of hours you spend like just doing the setup of the server alone will be more than what all the time I've spent writing the template and getting this thing done, like just setting up the server alone. So this why it's actually very, very important to think serverless when you are trying to spin up a new workload on AWS. One, cost savings. Another importance is your time to market. You will be able to spin up things faster. You'll be able to get things done faster. You get with few people working on the code. So these are some of the beauty of some of the importance and beauty of actually thinking serverless first when you are trying to get something that will give you a good cost savings on AWS or like basically any other cloud provider. You get this. You want to think serverless first. So thank you so much for listening. I'm actually grateful you guys were here all through the call, and I'm actually happy that everyone participated. Everyone that participated, I'm grateful. So I'm sure you've learned 1 or 2 things today, and you can, because we'll be posting this obviously to YouTube, and you can, if you have questions, you can drop it now, and I'll try to answer them quickly. So Victor, thanks for moderating this session.
Very
So you
much,
can just
John, for that insightful session. I'll just take some of the questions I have here. Also, let's send in our questions. John said something very profound. Think serverless after all the plenty technical things he had mentioned. Awesome. So let's go to the next question here. So someone is asking, what is API? So let's take it very. Let's leave it on a very
sorry, I
surface
actually
level,
didn't
right?
go. Yeah, so API is short for application programming interface. Like that's how you have your front end. Like the front end is everything that has to do with the design of these websites. Now, where you are, how you get the data that the front end displays, you get the data most times with what you call APIs. Like it's the interface between the back end and the front end. Basically, that's like the short definition of API. Like the back end will give you the data, and the front end wants to display the data. So what what enhances that connection is what you call API, the application programming interface. I hope I answered that to your taste.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question. I'll just put it on the screen. And that question is, in my company, we built an AI bot that does a lot of things. I engineered the backend and exposed it via API web server. I am actually hosting it with EC2 instance on AWS and Elastic IP. The question now is, can I use Lambda function for a system like this?
Yes.
Yes.
It's like you should even be thinking Lambda function for this, because like I said throughout the whole webinar, like throughout my explanation, is Lambda function will give you drastic cost savings for something like this. Now, Lambda function also has its shortcomings. If your workload goes past, like what you are trying to process is more than 15 minutes, like each thing you are trying to process more than 15 minutes, then Lambda function is not suitable, because Lambda function times out at 15 minutes. But most of the things that has to do with web server, you don't want your client waiting for 15 minutes. That's definitely not the case. So as long as it's a web server, you want to go with Lambda function to get something like this done.
Thank you very much, Franklin. I believe that answers your question. Okay, so we go to the next question. Just a moment while I extract that. Okay. Yeah, so Franklin, the other question, your follow-up question is saving cost. Was John had talked about it. So there's a question here. I think that was why you were busy, you were trying to do the demo. Fred was asking, so is it that the item you tried adding the first got queued because of the Lambda function failed and was later sent to Lambda function after it was finally up and running?
No, not in this case. So in this case, if you checked, I actually went back to trigger the API again. Like I actually went back to hit the URL again. Not from Postman, because I think somebody pointed it out that there's an error somewhere. But I know the Postman error is something I've actually fixed something like that before in the past. It's just that I didn't see it when I was trying to run to this demo. Well, it's not something major.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any question again from my end? I'm not seeing any question we've not answered. Emeka, please validate also from your end.
Yeah, and if you have questions that you might not be able to ask on the call now, you want probably to interface with some of our engineers at Secure Intelligence, you can just reach out to my colleague in the or you just send us a mail. We'll get back to you, like, and we'll trash it out. We'll help you understand what your workload is about, and we'll give you like breakdown of how to get things done. And another thing AWS offers is what's called well-architected review. If you are using AWS and you have maybe one account or several accounts on AWS with multiple workloads or even one workload, and you want to see how secure, how efficient the workload is, you can reach out to us. We will run a free well-architected review for you. Like, we do that. And if you have probably some high risk issues in your account, because that's one of the things that the well-architected review will point out. Probably you have your users are not being handled with they don't have MFA set up. So things like that will be pointed out, because those are actually security vulnerabilities, and we can actually help you figure those things out and help you remediate those issues. So we do that also. In case you have such concern, you can reach out to us. So Victor, any other question?
All right, there's a question here, John. I have a question. So you have a containerized backend built with that jog with a container. Just a moment, let me project this so you can have a fuller picture, John.
Okay.
All right, so is it up now? Say you have a containerized backend build with the container each of the server, DBS, Redis, and all of that. how can a system like this be migrated to a serverless architecture?
Oh, okay. Now, when you have something like something related to Django, even though they are in containers, and you want to do a migration, basically, I'm sure what your Django is most likely doing. Yeah, I'm saying Redis, yeah, Nginx, sure. It's what you need to do is to figure out, okay, these are my APIs. You abstract you extract your APIs out and put them into use API gateway to get to it those same API. You configure API gateway and Lambda function so to get your API set up also. Then if you want to, you can also move your front end also to the static website into S3 buckets to get more cost savings. But that's usually the path to cost savings is that's what I just spelled out just now. Your APIs, even though they are like, you can link your databases with but if you are using SQL databases, you can use Lambda function also to reach those ones too. So you can do that with API gateway, Lambda function, DynamoDB, or your SQL data. You can do that. And with for your front end, your web server, which obviously from what I'm seeing here, you are using Nginx. You can abstract that out into, if you want to rebuild, you can use something like maybe React, then serve it with S3 buckets. Now that what I just spelled out now will give you enormous cost savings. Like if you are paying hundreds or thousands of dollars, you should just your savings will be actually very low. So, any other question? I hope I've been able to answer that.
I believe you have. I believe you have. Thank you very much, John. Thank you
Okay.
very much. So for those of us who have asked questions on how we could connect, on how you could connect with our team after today's webinar, a link has been dropped into the chat room for you to schedule free consultation calls with our consultant. Would have session with you, flesh out some of your questions, your concerns, and see what the next step can be moving ahead. One of the things we believe we can achieve through this medium, through this event, is that we answer questions and not just leave you in that theoretical space alone, but we go into your consoles with your approval. We look at the things we need to do on a small and even on a big scale. To tell John made reference to certain enterprise training he had sometimes last week. This is to give you a full scale. This is to give you an idea of the full scale involvement that some of our guys are into and how they navigate through this tool. Thank you very much for engaging us so far. We would want to see you on the other side. I'm just trying to take a look if there is any question. John, you can stop sharing your screen at this point in time. I'm just trying to take a look if there is any question. Okay, yes, there are no question. Again, no question. So please feel free to schedule sessions with us. Those sessions would be tailored to your organization need, and we would discuss this. We'll take these conversations further. Do well to also follow us on our social media platforms, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can find us CIL Teams, CIL Academy, and we would definitely connect with you, and you sure would have access to robust materials and thoughts that we share with our online community. Thank you very much. For those of us who have attended this session, I can tell you on good record that you would be getting a post-webinar mail which would contain the recording of today's webinar. That's one of the things we would also do. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day till we come your face till we come your face next time. I was almost going to say same time next week, but that's not going to be next week. But stay tuned. We would be cooking something that would be very valuable to your organization needs, your personal need, and we would see you soon. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now. Okay, so a question just popped at saying bye for now. Which certification do I need as a cloud computing professional? So we would advise you take the very basic, start from the very fundamentals before you begin to specialize and what. So cloud computing would be CCP. What's the full name for CCP now? Can anybody help me?
That's cloud practitioner.
I didn't get that.
Cloud practitioner.
Yes, thank you very much. Cloud practitioner certification is what we would advise you take for me. Also, reach out to book a session. We can guide you on how to purchase your voucher and register for your exams. Also, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you. Bye for now.